I'm always curious about how people end up where they end up and the decisions that you made along the way. What got you into technology in the first place?
So it's actually quite an accident. My passion was actually biology and genetic engineering. That's what I wanted to do. And this was 1996. Dolly just came out, I believe. Genetic cloning, the first genetic cloning. I was absolutely fascinated by genetic engineering. I thought that's
The
the
sheep,
future.
the clone sheep. Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about? Yeah,
the
yeah,
sheep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that's what I wanted to do. And then computers was a complete accident. Took a course in a summer break for computers, and I absolutely loved uh, the technology, and I was more drawn to computer gaming than anything else. And then somebody told me this game was written in this specific language, and I was, how could this be written in a language? And I was trying to learn the language, and I realized this language allows me to do very basic stuff. How do they build a very complex game like this? So that got my curiosity and got into computers. So time progressed. I actually studied chemical engineering. I was not officially don't have a degree in computer science. Then I started assembling computers for my friends and family and for myself. And one thing when you do assemble computers is things break all the time.
I used to do that. I used to do the same thing, and it always blew my mind that the thing wouldn't fire up. All the
Yeah.
pieces were there, the software was in there, and it just
Work.
would not light up.
Yeah. Same thing. So I assembled computers. It would install Windows, DOS, Linux, all different operating systems. And every time things doesn't break, it got my curiosity, and I was trying to fix the issue. So I became very, very energized by problem solving when things didn't work. On the flip side, the the family and friends that I was servicing with computers, they were upset. And they were like, I just want this damn computer to work because I want to talk to my son. I want to video chat with my son somewhere else. Like I got the intersection of humanity and technology and how technology fails gloriously in front of humanity. That's when I realized that technologies were not designed with humanity in mind. We were, instead of technology adapting to the limitations of human beings were adapting to the limitations of technology. I thought this is fundamentally broken. Technology should be servicing to our limitations. Instead, we were trying to understand all the limitations of interacting with computers, right? So I felt like this is something the industry, finally that revolution is happening right now. Right now, the technology is adapting to human limitations, right? So that's what got me into this. Subconsciously, I didn't even realize I was a support person, but I realized I was doing support for my friends and families when I was assembling computers because I was a go-to IT guy when something broke. Then I got drafted into this company called VMware. They were very, very small. They were 80 people company. They were looking for Linux talent in India, and I was one of the few folks who had Linux talent at the time. They reached out to me, offered me a job, and I said, I want to be an operating system engineer. What do you mean I have to be a support engineer? Took the job because the technology was fascinating and ended up really, really liking it. And I think often people don't understand how rewarding support job is, especially when you're doing technical support. I'm not sure about frontline support, maybe that rewarding. Technical support, when you're dealing with complex issues, every issue that you're solving, that's an instant reward because you see the outcome of the customer. Customer is very happy. They will be very thankful to you. It's an adrenaline rush. Yeah. So that's kind of the journey for me.
Well, and so as you've been building your business, I'm curious about what you think about developing culture and what you look for with regard to characteristics within employees that can basically build out the culture on top of all the other folks that you've hired. And what do you look at and think about with regard to company culture?
I think one thing I've learned, I think this was a phrase somebody told me and it stuck with me. Culture is basically what you can tolerate. That's what becomes the company culture.
And I'd expand on that, please.
So often what we tend to do is we don't take a firm stance on certain things, and we let it slide, we let it go, and we're tolerant to things. When you become tolerant to things, then you don't have a culture. Culture basically defines as you reward the right things, and you're intolerant to things that you doesn't align with what you believe in. That's what becomes the culture of the company. So this, once I recognized that, I just changed. The only way to shape a culture is be absolutely saying, this is absolutely no, we cannot do this. This is not us, right? This is not the company. This is not the tradition we want to have in this company. On the flip side, when they do the right thing, you recognize it and reward it. And reward doesn't mean monetary reward or anything, like just recognizing and calling it out, saying you did the right thing. This behavior is commendable. That's what shapes the culture. And for a startup, invariably, the DNA of the founder becomes the company's culture in one way or the other. It permeates because you're making all these microcosm of decisions: who to hire, who not to hire, what to reward, what to emphasize, what not to emphasize. That eventually shapes the culture of the company. So I realized that I need to focus on my inner self if I need to shape my company's culture. What is important to me? What is not important to me? What are the cultural values that I want to uphold? That's what eventually becomes company's cultural values, invariably.
Now, is SupportLogic, I'm sure like every company these days post-pandemic, there's some hybrid approach to employee in-office participation. How do you manage that in terms of getting the culture? So prior to the pandemic, there was a great deal of cultural sharing from just being around one another, obviously, and that has gone away pretty significantly. How do you manage around that?
So even before pandemic, we're distributed from day one of the company, geographically distributed from day one. So for us, the pandemic was not a big transition at all. So managing culture in a distributed environment, it's all about, again, you have a channel of communication. For most companies, it's Slack. It's a channel of communications. So what you say or don't say in those channels, what you recognize and what you dismiss, that's important. Company all hands are super important. Re-emphasizing, repeating the message is super important. Often when people hear it for the first time, they sort of get it. Second time, third time, fourth time, they internalize it. And then, of course, you have new people coming in, so you have to constantly refresh it. It's not a one message. It's not like you write it on a wall and a piece of paper and it's done. It needs to be repeated over and over and over, and in different forms and different stories. That's when it gets ingrained into the company's DNA. And founder plays an enormous role in ingraining the culture in the company, repeating it. It should not be delegated to, in my opinion, to an HR function. It should come from the founder and the CEO.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I appreciate the all-in comment, because it is now, one could argue, easier to communicate, and because you can have an all-in call with basically an all-company call, unlike the old days where there wasn't a room typically big enough or everybody wasn't around enough, and it was done via whatever, starfish phone on a conference room table. It's so much more easy to have those conversations regularly, and I think you're right, delivering those messages matters. I'm curious about younger people. I know you probably have internships and you're constantly recruiting new folks into the organization. I have a couple of kids who are now up and out. I have another daughter who's just getting into college, but I wonder about what they're going to experience over the next 20 or 30 years with regard to this moment in time and all that's going to happen with regard to AI. What what would you suggest, or any advice you would offer to a young person beginning a career in enterprise technology? I mean, is there places where you think they should, if they want to rise to the level that you've risen? Are there any places that you would think they would be best suited? I mean, I know you mentioned support and customer interactions. Certainly a very valuable, learning experience. Any other kind of places that you thought, if I'm glad I did those things and put myself in those positions to get that value?
The first few jobs that I did is foundational. And I would say pick a job not for salary, not for the glamour. Pick a job that really helps you to learn the first few jobs. I took peanut salary for my first job. But was a tremendous learning ground. I had other opportunities. I could have taken a different job, much better salary, but I would have not learned this much. So I think that's important. I think there is a phrase, I think Jerry Seinfeld said recently, which I resonated with me. Do what you think is cool. What do you personally think is cool? Don't worry about what the society thinks. Don't worry about what your parents think or your friends think. Just focus on what's cool. Because if you do something that you think is cool, means you have a genuine interest in it. You're drawn to it and you will excel in it eventually. So that kind of my generic advice I would give. And that's very difficult to do because it's something sometimes you have to buck the trend and do something that others have not done. For me, in my case, my small case, I took support role. My friends were saying, why are you doing support? Krishna, you're an engineer. You should be an operating system engineer. But I ended up really liking it. And I thought it was cool to doing it. I didn't care about what my friends and family thought about it. I think that to me, it makes a big difference in the long run.
Oh, I think it's harder than ever with all the social media pressure and this, kind of image creation that's required now of younger people to present themselves in their best possible way to have that maturity to say, no, this is a long-term game and I'm investing in a different set of inputs than what my friend group or my family would expect me to where they'd expect me to be. One of the best things I ever did. So I was had a very advanced early career in politics, actually, before I got into technology. And during college and right out of college, I was successful as a political consultant and a campaign manager. But I got to a point around the age of 25 where I just wasn't happy doing that. And I became a bartender because I needed customer service. I needed interaction at a different level. I knew I did. I was not as good as I probably could have been in interpersonal skills. I knew I needed to just shake some of that off and grow in a way that was very unconventional, and not a lot of people that I knew thought it was my best career move to leave a highly successful political career and go into nightclub bartending. But I walked out of that so much better off from having those interpersonal skills.
Yeah, that's foundational to political career.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, and also when you see an opportunity, and I think you probably saw an opportunity when you see technology beginning to change, and that's another thing that I noticed when the internet landed, and I was still in politics, and I recognized that I needed to be out of politics and into technology. That was in the 90s. When you see things like this, like right now, this moment in time, we are at the precipice of, I would argue, a technology revolution we've never even seen, and we've seen some dandies. It's important to get into the mix if you think that's where you would like to end up. And I'm curious, when you decided, I mean, you must have come of age with computer games, as you were saying, in the 90s, was it?
Correct, yeah.
And when the browsers started landing, I'm sure you were...
Netscape just came out in the market. I'm talking about DOS era, right? It's not even graphic user interface.
Yeah.
My first gaming experience was PC DOS.
Right. A lot of keyboard work.
Right. So graphical user interface itself was fascinating. Windows 3.1 was fascinating. Windows 95 was fascinating. And evolution of gaming, I still follow gaming industry. It's my personal passion. And how much it has evolved in the last 25, 30 years, how realistic the games have become. It's all fascinating journey from small single pixel games to the 3D world and immersive world that we can live in right now.
There's a school of thought that says that games going forward, based upon generative AI and similar artificial intelligence,